When we get ready to edit a design, we'll need to select different elements of it. And we already know a few selection tools. Well, let's take a look at some of the more advanced selection tools. In DesignShop, in the project view, we know that we can select at the project level by clicking on the project level, and we'll get everything in that project. We can also do the same thing at the design level or at a single color. If I want to deselect something, I can click off of it in a blank area to deselect it. Selecting a single color allows you to select everything within that color, and we know that if we expand this out, we can select individual elements. If we want to select multiple consecutive elements, we can click on one, hold Shift, click on another, and select everything in between. If we want to select non-consecutive elements, we can click on one, hold Control, click on others, and we can select non-consecutive elements without selecting everything else in between. So we can select in the project view. We know that we can select in the view window as well. We can click on an element. Keep in mind that when we click on an element here, we're only going to get what's on top. So whatever shows last, that's what we're going to get. I'm not going to be able to drill down through and click underneath of this. Ways that we could do that, we could hide the element and then we could click on an element underneath of it. So anything that is hidden is not able to be selected, or anything that is locked is not able to be selected. So that's a way to select through layers. If you want to keep everything visible and you want to keep everything unlocked, but you still want to drill down through your layers, you have a few more options. If I click right here on this bird, I'm going to select the wing because that's the topmost thing that I selected. However, if I want to drill down through my layers, I can utilize these arrow icons here. It's select previous and select next. So if I go previous, it will drill down through the layers and select what is underneath where I clicked. If I do it again, I will get kind of the manual underlay for that bird. And then if I do it again, I will get the travel stitch from pair to pair. Now where I clicked, if I zoom in really closely, is where a lot of elements overlapped. Had I clicked here on the bird, where there wasn't anything underneath where I clicked, clicking on previous element won't do anything for me. Even though there are stitches underneath that whole fill, there are not stitches underneath where I clicked. So that's not going to do me any good to drill down through. So previous and next element are a way to drill down through your layers, but they are very dependent upon where you click. Other ways to select, I could click and drag a box around my elements, and that will allow me to select anything that I've drug a box completely around. You have to completely surround the element that you want to select in order to select it. Other things I could use is the custom point selection. So if I click on this, it works like a bit of a lasso. So I can click and drag around the elements that I want to select. There we go. And then I'll hit enter to close that, and I will select everything that I have drawn completely around. Now this is great for drawing around elements, but it's also handy if you have an element selected. Let's zoom in here. And you want to select multiple of the input points. You can select the custom point selection and you can draw around certain points that you want to select. Hit enter and it will select just those points. You can then click on those points and edit just those points. Let me hit undo real quick. You can also do the same thing if you were expanded editing. Now expanded editing means that you are changing the individual needle penetrations of a design, and this gets a little bit detailed and can be at times tedious moving needle penetration by needle penetration. However, if you use the custom point selection, you can go in and select around individual needle penetrations and do the same type of thing with multiple needle penetrations at the same time. So I draw around it, I hit enter to close that lasso, and then I can drag those needle penetrations wherever I want them. Keep in mind that when you're expanded stitch editing, you are only moving needle penetrations. You're not actually adding any. So if you move those needle penetrations farther apart, you're actually lengthening those stitches and they get a little bit longer. So you want to be careful expanded stitch editing. Also, when you expanded stitch edit, if you go back in and try to wireframe edit, it's going to stop you and say, you know what, you've already expanded stitch edited. If you wireframe edit, it's going to have to regenerate all of those stitches. So when you do that and move a wireframe point, it will regenerate all those stitches and you will lose any expanded stitch editing that you have done on a wireframe file. Typically, I leave expanded stitch editing for expanded designs or those stitch files. Let's take a look at just another couple of ways to select. If I want to select an entire color at a time and there are multiple instances of that color, so let's take some of these pairs and divide them up so that we have a reason to do this. So let's say I have half these pairs sewing after the leaves, which generally I don't want to do because now I've got crazy travel stitches. But if I had multiple instances of the exact same color and I wanted to select all of that color at a time, I could right-click on the active color and say Select Color, and it will select every time that color appears. Other things that you could do, let me move this back. There we go. If I wanted to select every complex fill in a design, I could select one. I could right-click on it. I could go to Select, and I could say Select Same Type, and it would select every complex fill in the design. So now I have the pears and the bird. Anytime it's using a complex fill, that is what I have selected. So now that we've got a few of the more complex selection tools, you've got ways to navigate through your designs and select exactly what you want to edit.